Hello and welcome back, everyone. Double Happy Friday. Now, you might ask, why is it a double Happy Friday? Aren't we just doing the normal looking through the Tinto maps thing, just kind of chilling, looking through the maps of the stuff as map gamers? Yes, but last week we did miss the Happy Friday of looking over the Tinto maps of Anatolia, and while we're not going to go through it today, because I think those of you who really wanted to see the map probably sought it out yourself, we did in fact double it and send it to the next Friday, which is why this Friday is a double Happy Friday. Without further ado, let's get into it, and we have Russia, which is going to be quite nice because it pairs nicely with the Sphere of Influence coming out where they reworked all of the Russian land, so it's going to be interesting or cool to kind of see some of the overlap on some of these things, and let's get into it. Actually, before we do, let's see if they wished us a Happy Friday. Hello everyone and welcome to the 7th edition of Tinto Maps. I am once again wishing you a happy Friday. Nope, I guess we didn't have a happy Friday. Okay, what about this one, for Russia? Hello, and welcome to one more week of Tinto Maps. This week we'll be taking a look at Russia. Love the enthusiasm, hate the lack of a happy Friday. Terrible. Well, let's call it a wash. As an introductory note, we're considering today's the Russia core, which is in 1337 is comprised the different Russian principalities as far as the White Sea to the north and the Ural Mountains to the east. The Ural Mountain Range, if I recall correctly, is the barrier that forms, or the barrier that divides the continent between Asia and Europe. I'm not 100% sure, but this mountain range over here, these lands that would later be incorporated into the Russian Empire will be covered in future Tinto maps. Otherwise, we would have to cover like 1/8 of the landmass in just one dev diary. This seems fair enough. And here we get a nice map of it, as of course we do when we're looking at maps. Tinto maps. Russia is divided into several principalities in 1337. The dominant one is probably Muscovy, which I think is the one that eventually put everything together. As its Grand Prince, Ivan the First, I'm not going to pronounce that, is also Prince of Nizhny Novgorod and Kostroma and of Novgorod by election in this case. He also holds the title of Grand Prince of Vladimir, bestowed by the Khan of the Golden Horde, which makes him the ruler enforcing the Tartar yoke over other Russian principalities, which in our game is represented through an international organization. The coloring of different countries is different tones of yellow as they are tributaries of the yoke. So we can see all these ones that are yellow up in here. The other main power in the region is the Grand Republic of Novgorod, with a completely different institutional structure that allows them to pick their rulers. Their power comes from being the main trading power between the Baltic Sea and the Russian regions, and it's the overlord of the two border countries, the Principality of Pskov and the County of Oreshek, a border country in Karelia, as agreed with Sweden after a recent war. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing any and or all of this, but we do see Novgorod up here with its there's Oreshek, and did they say Pskov is the other one? But we do see kind of these two balance of powers. Several lands to the north and east are not owned by any country. Cool. And so we will be able to settle those, we think, but we see them blank currently. As a final note, you may also see that Lithuania is the overlord of some of the principalities, some of them directly through Gediminid rulers, Polostak or Vitebsk, while other, oh my god, there's so many names, Rurikovich rulers, Smolensk or Rezhkev. Again, apologies for the fact that I do not know how to pronounce all this, but we are talking about this here in Lithuania. So we have, a kind of complex situation. Hopefully there's, yeah, this will be fun to play through in terms of uncovering or discovering or resolving is probably actually the best word. What's going to happen in the region? I definitely like being able to start off small and grow. Whenever I think of the reason people enjoy map games, I often think I'm reminded of a Nietzsche quote, which is that joy is the feeling of your power increasing, although it depends on the translation that you're currently reading whether or not that's the quote, but often starting small and then forming something bigger and then bigger and then bigger is really what feels good. So having the opportunity to start off as someone smaller, especially something like Muscovy and eventually form Russia, really definitely feels nice. And so this is, I think, in terms of storytelling that you tell yourself in regards to what's going on, this is one of the great appeals of a game that lasts 500 years is, you get to progress in this enormous way from a very much smaller thing. Whereas Victoria 3, you're kind of, I love the Victoria 3 systems, but it's a lot smaller in terms of the scope of what you can do over an extended period of time, or you start off much larger, this type of stuff as well. Okay, so we have, what is this map mode? The starting diplomatic of Muscovy and the Tartar yoke, for the sake of clarity. Okay, so we have here, is this Nizhny Novgorod in terms of the diplomacy with Muscovy? I'm not sure what they're representing here, but here we have Muscovy, and are these all the princes that answer to Muscovy? Who's in charge of enforcing the Tartar yoke? Okay. Next up we have dynasties. A lot appears to be Rurikovich, and a little bit of Cherydin, and then this one as well. Don't know how to pronounce these. Apologies if you are Russian or from the region. I suppose Lithuanian. I have no idea how to pronounce a lot of these. Several branches of the House Rurik rule over the Russian lands. Fun fact, we have 18 different branches portrayed in the game. The exceptions are a few principalities and the ruler of Karyela, Prince Nari Mantos of the Lithuanian Gediminids, also the Cherdin and Vyatka, oh my god, are randomly assigned to dynasties, and we haven't been able to get enough data for those countries on 1337. That must be, like, also just kind of just a general huge challenge for this type of thing, because it's one thing to answer the question who was in charge in 1377 of a particular country. It's another to answer it for, hundreds of countries, perhaps. I'm not sure how many countries are in the starting condition on Game Start, but there's currently, I think 182 or 160 to 180 or 190 countries in the world right now. I certainly could not name the last name of many of the rulers, so... we get a bunch of locations. We're showing a less detailed region of this week because, well, Russia is big. Feel free to ask for more detailed screenshots of specific areas, and I'll try and provide them. We're also showing some parts of the steppe of Finland. Kola, because of the scale of the maps, take them as unavoidable spoilers, as we'll talk about them more in depth in future maps. But yeah, this is a lot of provinces. Russia's a big place. Or, not provinces, locations. Then we have the provinces in the kind of more zoomed in area. Again, not super informed about what provinces would make sense, although a lot of this is recognizable of stuff that we see in Victoria, notably Perm is a standout. Very, very strong state, or at least it was. Now that the reworks happened, I don't think that Perm's kind of holding the flag as being like the best Russian state anymore, or anywhere near it. So that's kind of neat. And then we have terrain, and we see Arctic, which I don't think we've seen too much of up till now. We see Arctic and continental, remembering that continental had a lot of, I think, hunting and kind of woodland territories before, expecting to see a lot of that if Victoria 3 is informing our knowledge of what the wood is like, because there's quite a bit of wood. We see almost entirely flatlands with some hills, which seems to be good for perhaps raising horses, and steppes definitely makes some sense. And then we see the vegetation here in the terrain map mode for having a lot of forests and woods. A lot of forests, especially in the far north. This definitely makes sense in terms of, well, like if you learned about latitude and how it affects vegetation, there's going to be a thick band of forests around this latitude, which kind of checks out and Was expecting to see more grasslands, but I suppose this makes sense. We see, yeah, just mainly a huge clump of forest. We see a few farmlands, you know, kind of here and there, expecting those to be the really valuable territories. So overall, probably not going to be necessarily the best place for building super tall, would be my guess, except in these key areas. Is this St. Petersburg over here? Is Moscow somewhere around here? I'm not really sure. Just by looking at the map, I'm not necessarily being able to place it. I think St. Petersburg, if it's not there, it's somewhere near there, and I think the same's true with Moscow. Okay. We see, for cultures, we see Muscovite, Novgorodian, Komi, and then more the Central Asian-oriented ones kind of over here, although that stuff kind of mixes around. Cultures, much enthusiasm, much excitement. As in the other regions, we've decided to have 3 different cultures in the Russian region: Novgorod, Muscovite, and Severian. The design here is different than in the Ruthenian region because Russia was more politically divided in the High Middle Ages and would later be more culturally unified later. Later on. That's usually what happens when it's later, while in Ruthenia the situation would be the opposite. In any case, the 4 of them are East Slavic cultures, and we're open to feedback, of course. Yeah, deciding what cultures everyone should be, like, 700 years ago is kind of a strange thing to be doing. In terms of, like, I mean, they obviously have to do it, but, like, I mean, in terms of how do you decide what, like, the English culture from 800 years ago is not the same English, even though it's contiguous, is not the English culture of today, right? Just like if you ever read any of, like, Old English, it's like doesn't resemble, like, modern English at all today. It's incomprehensible unless you've, like, studied it before. Like, and so the notion that these cultures are like in a contiguous line towards, like, a modern culture is, like, a bit of an abstraction, but at the same time it's like, if you look back one generation, there's no clear point at which it was not the culture of the previous one, but the slow shifting over time. It's similar to, like, a pattern of evolution where, you know, if we all came from fish, right, at a certain point your daddy, or your daddy's daddy, or your daddy's 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 daddy's, all the way back, at a certain point, they're a fish, right? And then, exactly at what point were they a fish, it's... nobody could say that correct. Like, the clear pointed line, it's not a clear line, it's just a slow shift over time. This is such a weird tangent to be on when we're looking at some maps here. Alright, let's continue. Apart from that, there are a bunch of different cultures bordering the region: Karelen, Pamir, Komi, Udmurt, etc. We might add some of the more minorities to these cultures in the feedback post after this dev diary. It's been super cool to see them, like, update stuff after receiving feedback. Also take into account the minorities over the Tartar lands currently under Kazani and Mishray cultures are not yet done. Okay, so we see religion. The religious map mode is a bit interesting because we get a whole bunch of Orthodox, some Shamanist, and I don't know what's down here. I don't know what the color represents, but it's much more interesting than our constant, and then we also have, is this Tengrist? Kind of up in here. Definitely more interesting than 100% Catholic in the map modes. Eastern Orthodoxy is the dominant in the region, although there are other regions in the area as well, as we'll take Animist, Tengrist, Shamanist, or wide categories. I guess this might be Shamanist. Where's the Shamanist? Oh no, that's the Shamanist. Okay, yeah. As we'd like to add a little bit more granularity for them, again, determining religions, when the religion 800 years ago, like Orthodox, I imagine, doesn't well, I don't know to what degree Orthodox from 800 years ago represents modern Orthodox, but it'll have the same sorts of issues. Although that will come in later in the year. Don't expect them to be added in the coming Tinto maps, but maybe in the later ones. We've already seen some posts asking about Slavic paganism. Up until now, we've considered the Russian people to be Christianized, even though it was a bit or more or less superficial process. Yeah, because all of the like kind of the more north-ish areas, like the farther you get from Rome, the more it was like a transition towards Catholicism or Christianity, right? And some people are not as deep in that transition as others, I would guess, by 1337. If you'd like us to add a religion and some percentage of the population adhering to it, then I'd ask for you for specific sources that could help us to portray it. So isolated references to it being followed here or there won't be helpful, while academic sources saying up to X% of the population was following Slavic rites might very much be. So that would make sense. If I recall, the reason you move Christmas to the 25th, when that's not the date of Christ's birth, is like to correspond to the winter solstice to make converting the northern pagans easier in terms of like practice. It replaces the winter solstice as a celebration. Okay, time for our favorite map. The raw materials, quite different resources to other regions previously shown, with plenty of lumber. This is, if Victoria 3's taught us anything, is that there's a lot of wood up here. Fur and wild game in this region. I've also extended the screenshot a bit to the east so you can see the mineral richness of the Ural Mountains. Hell yeah, brother. With plenty of locations with copper, iron, gold, and lead, making it quite juicy to colonize. So I don't think there's a lot of people here at the start, but yeah, we do see copper, iron, also quite a bit of salt. I don't know if that's multiple provinces. We see some salt in here too. Huge swaths of fur, definitely a ton of lumber, and so the enormous quantity of lumber is, I think, gonna, and actually we see like a nice spread of iron just kind of everywhere. Like, okay, I guess there's not iron in here, but there are horses in here, in terms of having the ability to expand out the military. But is this just unsettled so we don't get to see the resource, or there's just no resources there? Is that just the too frigid north? We do see some silver in some areas here, but that'll be interesting. Wild game alongside the fur in a lot of these spots. And so the question will be, in my mind, what this map raises the question is, if we have a huge glut of lumber, is that going to inform our economy in a substantive way? Because you're going to have markets that have an enormous amount of lumber and fur, right? And okay, I assume we want to try and sell them and import what we need and this type of thing, but I believe that this will drive down the price of lumber, and if we have cheap lumber, then we are probably going to have to organize our economy in a different way, or we're going to be incentivized to organize it in a different way, and this is very exciting. We do see a lot of wheat down here kind of in the further south. I think that we're kind of getting into Ukraine down here, so that makes sense. Very, very cool. I mean, this map definitely has a lot less variety in it, but I think thinking about how this is going to inform, strategy is definitely really interesting. The presence of a lot of horses, in my mind, and lumber, in terms of military, I do think there's a lot of resources for waging war, right? Because, okay, there's speckles of iron everywhere. There's some horses in the south here. And then, I imagine, well, I don't know if fletching and this type of thing would use lumber. I wonder if you building stuff for harvesting wild game would help you with having levies that are good with bows. I don't really know. That's kind of, okay. We have markets. We have Kazan, Muscovy, or Moscow, and Novgorod. The counter to the richness of the natural resources of the region is its integration into different markets, which at the start of the game are centered around Novgorod, Moscow, and Kazan. Fully exploiting the economic possibilities of Russia will therefore require effort and patience. Why is it going to require effort and patience? Because we have to integrate multiple places? I mean, I'm kind of pleased, or I would be pleased with, if we divide it into thirds like this. It does seem to be like a nice spread of each resource kind of for each market. So it does seem not densely, it's not like all the iron is over here and all the wood is over here and all the wheat is, you know, somewhere in the middle or something like this. It does seem kind of spread out. Country, location, and population, we definitely like the country map mode. Really not that much pop, or I was kind of expecting more. Let's see, which one is these is Muscovy. We can kind of scroll up a little bit because I can't remember where on the map is Muscovy precisely. So Muscovy's got the, Muscovy's like the crown-shaped country, I suppose, with the bump in the middle. And so taking a look at here, I'm curious if they have the most population. They have 792k, which does seem to be the most populous. I mean, we have a fraction of a million over here, but this isn't really on part of the map. So Muscovy does seem to have the highest population out of everyone. It seems very densely kind of coordinated up here. Not so much in the north or the east, where the Ural Mountains are, where a lot of the mineral resources are. And so I guess this is going to be the Thunderdome one, where the action happens. We see the more difficult to look at map. Really wish these were heat maps. But we do see major population centers for a lot of these, and where the pops are. Man, a lot of pop maps. I guess, I mean, Russia's a big place, huh? Russia is a big place. Not a lot of pops up here. Okay. Not many people inhabit the Russian core, approximately 6 million in total. This poses a serious challenge regarding the expansion of any Russian country, which will be interesting and fun to play through. Also, we've divided into 4 different maps the location, population of the region to make it possible to visualize. It still kind of hurts our eyes a little bit, but okay. A side note, you may note that the population of NW Novgorod and Karyella is calculated a bit differently. That is because Johan took care of drawing the Scandinavian map in an early stage in development, and the content design team took over the rest of Russia at a later stage when we'd already refined a bit more our population calculation methods. Okay, this means that when we do the feedback pass after this Tinto maps in a few weeks, we'll homogenize the style as well. And that's all for today. We hope that you find it interesting and give us great feedback. Next week, we're traveling to Carpathia and the Balkans. Ooh, Balkans, that'll be fun. Yeah, very excited to see and kind of dig into kind of another raw materials one and try and think through what we can. Obviously, we don't have a lot of information, you know, regarding how this is going to inform, you know, your building strategy, but I still like to try and think through it. We'll see how things go. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. And other than that, have a happy Friday.